Once upon a time, in the heart of Lagos, lived a married couple, Chijioke and Obiola. They had been together for over 6 years before finally tying the knot. Obiola was pregnant with their first child, and Chijioke loved her dearly, showing her affection in countless ways. Every morning, he'd bring her breakfast in bed, leaving her handwritten notes scattered around their house, expressing his love and devotion. They were a perfect couple, with laughter always echoing through their apartment, and Obiola often felt like the luckiest woman alive. Despite the challenges of pregnancy, their love remained unshaken, and Chijioke couldn't seem to get enough of his wife. Even when they had disagreements, they never went to bed angry, ending every argument with a gentle kiss on the forehead. He would often brag to his friends about his wonderful wife, claiming that Obiola was the best woman any man could ever have. And all his friends would envy the love they shared. One morning, as Obiola was preparing to go for her antenatal appointment, Chijioke asked her a question she never expected. "Why don't you ever go to church with me?" he asked, his voice soft but tinged with concern. Obiola, adjusting the strap of her handbag, paused for a moment, not meeting his gaze. "I just don't feel like it," she responded casually, her tone light. "Besides, you already go for both of us," she added, smiling as she grabbed her bag, ready to head out. Chijioke didn't respond, and Obiola thought little of the exchange. She went to the hospital and later stopped by the mall to pick up some groceries. When she returned home, she urgently needed to use the restroom, but to her shock, Chijioke stood in her way. His expression was unreadable, and without saying a word, he locked the bathroom door, blocking her access. Confused and holding her bladder, Obiola asked, "What's wrong, babe?" Chijioke said nothing, his cold silence unsettling. Then, in a voice colder than the winter wind, he spoke, "Do not ever use any toilet in this house again." Obiola blinked in confusion. "Why? What happened?" she asked, but Chijioke only walked away, retreating to their bedroom without uttering another word. Obiola stood there in disbelief, unable to understand what had just happened. Desperately needing relief, she ignored his warning and rushed into the bathroom, thinking her husband was only joking. However, she soon realized that Chijioke was far from joking. That evening, he refused to join her for dinner. He didn't answer when she asked if something was wrong. When she leaned in for a goodnight kiss, he turned his face away, leaving her stunned and hurt. At first, Obiola chalked it up to stress. Perhaps something had gone wrong at work, she thought. But Chijioke continued to ignore her. The next morning, she was horrified to discover that all the bathrooms in their house had been locked. She called her best friend, Oluchi, to share her concerns, but Oluchi was equally perplexed and advised her to confront her husband. Later that evening, when Chijioke returned from work, Obiola decided to have the conversation, but her husband was still distant, continuing to ignore her. She sat there in silence, wondering how the man who once knelt in the rain to propose to her had become so cold and distant. As the days passed, Obiola found herself relying on the kindness of her neighbor, Temideo, to use the bathroom. Temideo, a devout Christian, offered no judgment and allowed her to use her restroom whenever the need arose. Still, Obiola felt the sting of humiliation each time she had to turn to her neighbor for help. One evening, Oluchi came to visit and was furious upon learning what Chijioke was doing to his pregnant wife. She stormed out of the house, calling Chijioke to demand an explanation. "How could you treat her this way? She's carrying your child," Oluchi yelled at him over the phone. But Chijioke dismissed her, saying that it was none of her business. Obiola's life continued in this strange, suffocating silence, with her husband completely ignoring her. One morning, as she tried again to talk to him, she overheard him speaking to another woman on the phone. Her heart sank as she heard him whispering words of affection to someone else. She couldn't believe it, Chijioke was cheating on her. Days later, Obiola found herself standing in front of Oluchi's house, her heart racing. She had seen Chijioke's car parked outside, and she couldn't bring herself to confront him. When she called Oluchi to ask what was going on, she received no response. It was only later that she received a heart-wrenching text from her best friend, "Chijioke is mine now. Stop trying to get him back." Obiola was devastated. Her husband had not only betrayed her, but so had the person she had trusted most. She was overwhelmed with grief, but there was more to the story. After confronting Temideo, she discovered the unthinkable. Temideo had orchestrated everything. She had used dark spiritual practices to break apart their marriage, manipulating Chijioke's mind and making him believe that Obiola was no longer the woman he had married. Temideo, in truth, was a witch who had used her powers to control him. Obiola was forced to come to terms with the reality of her situation. She had lost her baby and her husband, and she could no longer trust anyone. But in the midst of this devastation, she found solace in prayer. She began to seek God's guidance, despite all the pain she had endured. With the help of a local pastor, Obiola sought spiritual deliverance and healing, and eventually, Chijioke returned to her, a changed man. He was filled with remorse for what he had done, and together they worked to rebuild their broken relationship. It wasn't easy, but their journey was a testament to the power of forgiveness and the strength of their faith. Obiola and Chijioke learned a valuable lesson: evil often wears the mask of kindness, and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. But through prayer and spiritual sensitivity, they were able to reclaim their lives and their marriage. And so, they began again, wiser and more united than before.